All right, what is up, YouTube boxing family? It is I, K-Rod here. I'm back with another good video for y'all today. And I just figured that I share this video because I heard some good news that should be, valuable to share. And supposedly Jake Paul, he is now fighting Hasim Rahman Jr. For those of you who don't know who Hasim Rahman Jr. is, he is the son of the legendary former undisputed world champion at heavyweight, I think, for Mr. Hasim Rahman Sr., the man that knocked out Lennox Lewis back in the past. And then unfortunately, he then later got knocked out by Lennox Lewis, and I don't know what happened to him for the rest of his career, but he's had a pretty good stellar career. Hasim Rahman Sr. was a very, very good fighter, and now his son is fighting in the professional rankings. Unfortunately, I believe in his last outing he got knocked out by Tommy Morrison's son. I think Tommy Morrison Jr., if I'm not mistaken. I don't know like what his actual name is. I think his name is oh man, I forgot Tommy Morrison's son, but basically he knocked him out, unfortunately. And Hasim Rahman Jr., he hasn't been, boxing for quite some time. I don't think he's really been in the ring for that much long as far as like his recent activity. But I'm gonna talk about this matchup between Jake Paul, now fighting Hasim Rahman Jr., come August 6th, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. This is actually a very good fight. Jake Paul has said in the past that he actually sparred Hasim Rahman Jr., and I think this is actually a perfect style matchup. Not just to say that Hasim Rahman Jr., he's just gonna go in there just to get a check. I actually do believe that Hasim Rahman Jr., he could be a bad style matchup for Jake Paul. Looking at his resume, I mean, he's fought some decent level opposition, but I think obviously losing to Tommy Morrison's son, that's a pretty, how should I say, that's a pretty notable loss, like as far as, what's been happening within his career. I think application is always oh, sorry. I think he knows that heading into this fight, that this will be a very difficult matchup, and I think the biggest takeaway from it is that Hasim Rahman Jr., he has a lot more to prove to the world if he does actually beat Jake Paul, and I think that's really where everybody wants to see Jake Paul lose. Obviously, he was supposed to fight Tommy Fury, but unfortunately, we already know what happened with that. Tommy Fury, he's now banned from the United States from ever coming in because he has a criminal association with Daniel Canahan and the Canahan, a criminal syndicate with MTK Global and all the other links that they have connected. So the United States government had now officially came out to say that Tyson Fury and Tommy Fury, they are no longer coming back over here. If anything, they're basically put on the no-fly list, and they're basically put under heavy investigation. So that could be the very end of their lives if they do get caught and probably convicted. So, I think this is a better fighter for Jake Paul because Hasim Rahman Jr., he's a very big heavyweight. If I'm not mistaken, he's fought at heavyweight. I don't think he's ever fought at any other weight. Yeah, so he's like a pretty big heavyweight. He's 6'3". He's 31 years old. He's an orthodox. He got some pop. He only has six knockouts in his whole 12 fights. He only lost to Tommy Morrison's son, one of his sons, Kenzie Morrison. James Mackenzie Morrison. He was also undefeated at the time. And, I mean, Kenzie Morrison, he's a beast himself, too. I've always respected Tommy Morrison's sons. And who knows, maybe his son, Kenzie, could very well, upset a lot of big names in the heavyweight division. but I definitely do like watching him fight. I think he is definitely a interesting fighter to watch, and I also like Hasim Rahman Jr. because Hasim Rahman Jr. he deserves all the credit and all the praise in the world for going out there and trying to be the best that he could be, to try to do some of the things that his father used to do. So I think this is a great style matchup. I don't really care what anybody has to say. I think Jake Paul will very well lose this fight because I personally believe Hasim Rahman Jr. He's not coming in there to lose. This is a guy who's only tasted defeat only one time, in which he was only put down on the canvas by Kenzie Morrison, in which he's a good fighter. I think he knows what he has to do to actually make those adjustments. And also his brother Sharif, he fights at 154 and he's 25 years old. I gotta talk about Sharif Rahman. He's an absolute problem because now that I think about it, the Rahman family, they're making some big noise in boxing. Because now that Hasim Rahman Sr., I don't know what he does as far as like what he does outside of boxing, but he's making some moves, man. His sons could very well kill it very soon. But I hope Sharif Rahman, like himself, he can put himself in position to get a title if I'm not mistaken. Um, I gotta like double check if that is the second son of Hasim Rahman senior, because I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Hasim Rahman senior. He has two sons. He has Sharif and he has Hasim Rahman Jr. But yeah, that's good, man. Like I respect Hasim Rahman. He's always been a good ass fighter. He was a two-time heavyweight champion of the world. He held the unified titles for the WBC, IBF, and IBO lineals back in 2001, and then the WBC title again from 2005, 2006. I mean, his sons are obviously not him, but I think out of like the two brothers, I think Sharif Rahman, as far as what I've been hearing, he could take over. He could very well take over 154 and multiple divisions. But Hasim Rahman Jr., I think he's also good as well. I think he can make some noises as well too. And as far as like what I hear, I know that Hasim Rahman or Sharif Rahman, he be training out of the Mayweather gym. So I think he gets like a lot of good work in to keep himself active and very sharp in the ring. So I think he can easily make some noise. He has a fight coming up July 9th. He's facing Lionel Jimenez, some unknown dude with a really bad record. But I think that's only just there for him to just get his experience up, and he can put himself in position to try to win. But either way, I think as far as this fight goes, I think Jake Paul, he can be in some big trouble. I think Hasim Rahman Jr. is not coming in there to lose just by looking at everything at everything that he's done in his career. He is a very, very good fighter. Most of his fights were fought in America. He had some fights down in Mexico where he's actually had 6 knockouts his whole career. His opponents are not like super duper god tier, but I would rate it to be like C tier or B minus tier. So I think Hasim Rahman Jr. He's gonna come in here to actually beat up Jake Paul. Like as far as Jake Paul's vitals as a fighter, I believe Jake Paul, he's like what, like 6 foot, like what? Hold on. Jake Paul is height and reach. He's 6'1", and he has a 76-inch arm reach, and he's an orthodox fighter. So yeah, I don't really think Hasim Rahman Jr. is gonna let Jake Paul hit him. I think Rahman Jr. he's educated enough to break Jake Paul and make him work very hard for his shots. But I think Rahman Jr. He's gonna come in here to knock out Jake Paul. I think Jake Paul, he can be in some very, very big trouble. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because Rahman Jr., he has a lot more professional experience with 13 plus fights. But out of these 13 plus fights, he's been fighting guys that were like way bigger than him in the pros, especially in the heavyweight division. And I think Rahman Jr. He could very well make some noise, man. I think he could do some damage. Obviously he's 31 years old. He needs to be moved fast. If he wants to be, up there in the upper echelon, divisions, at the heavyweight division. And I think he could do some damage, in the heavyweight division. I would personally just like to see how he does against Jake Paul, because, if he loses to Jake Paul and he's not as good as we thought he was, then I will, look at him very differently, and I'll give my post-fight reaction on it. But I don't think Hasim Rahman Jr. he's bad. I think he's a very, very talented fighter, and I've seen him fight, a couple times, over the YouTube videos that have been posted about him. And I think he's a good ass fighter. I think Hasim Rahman Jr. He can very well upset Jake Paul. And guess what? If he ends up decisioning Jake Paul, or he knocks him down and he knocks him out late, because I don't know how many rounds this is gonna be, but if it's a 10-rounder, Jake Paul's getting knocked out. I don't care. I think Jake Paul understands that, knowing how he acts like he's at the A side every time he walks into a fight. It still doesn't show that Jake Paul is making any noise in boxing. It's just that he's just fighting whoever he wants to fight, and he's not really going through the professional rankings. I mean, yeah, there could be a time where Jake Paul, he could very well be offered to fight for a world title, but it's he didn't really earn his spot or his position in there. So I would definitely like to see Hasim Rahman Jr. get the upset victory. I think he could very well do it. You have 13 plus professional fights, and you've been in there with some very high level competition. Well, I want to say high level in the pros, but as far as sparring and as far as training with whoever has brought you up in the professional rankings, I think Hasim Rahman Jr. He's coming in focus in this fight. I think he could very well stop Jake Paul. His knockout ratio isn't that high. He doesn't have all the greatest power in the world, but he has some decent pop where, if you try to mess around with him, he's like your Dennis Ugas. If you mess around with him, he's going to hurt you, and he's going in there to stop you if he sees the opportunity fit for his fighting style. So I think Hasim Rahman Jr. he's gonna get the upset victory. And this is just my early prediction. I don't know what he's been doing outside of the boxing ring, but I'm pretty sure he is focused, he is dedicated, and I mean he's only been out the ring since April 29th. So I mean 3 months heading into this fight. Yeah, I think that's more than enough time for him to get his head rested, and he can be ready to fight a Jake Paul, because I mean Jake Paul, he can hit, but he's not really knocking people out, convincingly. I think if anything, he actually needs a lot of time to work up his shots. And I mean, he's a cruiserweight, so Jake Paul's not he's not gonna dog walk Hasim Rahman Jr. I think what's gonna happen is that Jake Paul, he's gonna try to throw some heavy ass shots to try to hurt Hasim Rahman Jr. And then if he can't hurt Hasim Rahman Jr., he could very well get stopped, because I can easily see that Jake Paul, he has stamina issues. He's not that good of a mover. He just stands in one, direction. He's very one-dimensional. But it's he doesn't really have anything to really show to Hasim Rahman Jr. where he's gonna be oh wow, this guy, he's really, really good. I personally think Hasim Rahman Jr. he's gonna use his experience and give Jake Paul a very difficult test, where I think Jake Paul, he's gonna either very well get stopped in this fight, or he's just gonna get outpointed And I would really hope that Rahman, he just keeps it to the outside. There's no need to trade with Jake Paul. Let Jake Paul come to you and break him down to the body and whip those right hooks, to his face. So therefore, Jake Paul, he can't really loop his shots in like he normally does against guys that are stationary. I think out of all 5 of his opponents that he's fought, like to which he's stopped every single one of his opponents. Every single one of his opponents have always standed right in front of him. He does not use any boxing movement. He stands right in front of you, and the best way to beat a guy that stands inside of the pocket with you is that you break him with a jab, and then you start immobilizing him to the body, and then you also pull hook counter his shots. So therefore, once he's wide open to get hard countered, I think if anything, Jake Paul he'll get hurt a lot easier, in a fight where he's just not as good as he really says he is. So I think Jake Paul, he's gonna try to come to fight, but I don't see him doing anything special in boxing. He's obviously using his young prime ages to his advantage for him to just get into the sport, use his YouTube following to promote his boxing career, and after that he just gets out of the sport whenever whenever he feels like it. So I mean, that's a smart move, congratulations, but at the end of the day, I don't really see Jake Paul going anywhere. I think Jake Paul, he will very well get knocked out at a world title level. I don't really see him to be that good. I think his trainer, BJ Flores, is absolute trash, and I don't really respect, a lot of things that Jake Paul does outside of boxing. But in boxing, you got to give him the credibility and respect. He helped out, Amanda Serrano get paid a lot of money to be fighting on his undercards, and then on top of that, she got her opportunity, which she got robbed by Katie Taylor. So I think either way, Jake Paul, he's a great asset to boxing, but as far as what he does outside of boxing, I don't really respect that out of him. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. I will see you guys soon, and that's pretty much it for my fighter breakdowns of this fight. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think Jake Paul is he gonna walk through Hasim Rahman Jr., or do you think Hasim Rahman Jr. is just gonna walk through Jake Paul? So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Bye.